Hi, welcome to the Edible Square at Kern County. My name is Pricila. Today we are going to be making a no-knead bread that only requires a little bit of ingredients, a little bit of effort, and some of your time. I know that everyone has sourdough starters going on the counters right now, but you don't need that because I know how daunting it is to keep something alive on the counter every day and having to feed it every day and discarding it, and what do you do with the discard? So I'm going to show you how to make a very delicious loaf of bread. So let's go over our ingredients and our tools that we're going to be needing today. Here I have a large mixing bowl, which it seems a little bit big, but again, this is going to rise because remember, as Ms. Jordan says, the yeast is alive. Here we have 2 pounds of all-purpose flour. Now you could just use whatever you have at home, whether it's all-purpose flour or bread flour, or even if you have whole wheat flour. So you might be asking yourself, what is the difference between bread flour and all-purpose flour? So all-purpose flour has a lower protein content that makes it suitable to use for cookies, cakes, muffins, and breads and pizza doughs. What is bread flour? So bread flour has a higher protein content that allows for your loaf of bread to have a higher rise and a sturdier crumb. But again, choose whatever you have at home. Here we have kosher salt. We like to use Diamond Crystal kosher salt here at the Edible Square at Kern County. But if you do not have kosher salt at home, you can use fine table salt or fine sea salt. Just use half of the amount because it is a finer grain and it's going to be extra salty because this kosher salt is flaky. And here we have yeast. It's just regular old active dry yeast, but it doesn't matter what kind of yeast you use because, again, this is a very easy recipe. Use whatever you have, just make sure that it's fresh. Because again, we need it to rise and for it to be alive. And here we have water. We have 3 1/4 cups of room temperature water, which again, we don't want too cold because it will take longer to rise, and we don't want too hot because it will actually kill our little yeasties that we want to make our bread rise and taste delicious. And some other tools that we're going to need today is I have a Danish whisk, which you do not need a Danish whisk, but I am an avid baker at home, and I thought it was a wise investment to get one of these. But you can use a wooden spoon, your hand, a metal spoon, a fork, whatever works. Okay, so let's get started on mixing it together. So now that we've mixed it all together, you're probably thinking, Pricila, I did something wrong. Is it supposed to look like this? Yes, it is supposed to look like this. So now we're going to cover it for 2 hours and let it rise. Okay. So this is what your dough should look like after it's doubled in size. It should take about 2 hours depending on the temperature of your kitchen. If your kitchen is a little bit on the cold side, it will take a little longer to rise, and that's totally okay. So let's look at what your dough should look like. So if you can see, it has a little bit of a jiggle. You see some of the bubbles. Our yeast has come to life. It is eating some of that flour. It's releasing some of that carbon dioxide. So now what we have to do is cover it. And we are going to set it in the fridge overnight. Patience is one of the key ingredients in this recipe, and it will be rewarded. So welcome back. Today is baking day. So let's get started on the first thing that needs to get done. So first thing is our Dutch oven, which also something very essential to this recipe. A Dutch oven can be found anywhere now at a very inexpensive price, a very worthwhile investment to your kitchen. So we're gonna put this in the oven at 500 degrees for at least 45 minutes. So what is the use of this, you say? We want to be able to mimic the fancy steam injected ovens that they have at bakeries, which will give us a very nice oven spring and a very nice brown crust. So now it's time to cut our dough out, shape it, and let it sit and rise for about 45 minutes to knock the chill off of the dough. Because again, this dough is not gonna rise very much on the counter. It's gonna happen all in our very, very hot Dutch oven. We are finally nearing the end of our journey. So if you take a look at our piece of dough, it has not risen much, but it's not as cold. So I'm gonna flour my hands once again. I'm gonna gently lift it, put it on my parchment. I'm going to grab my tiny little paring serrated knife. I am going to let the teeth of the serrated knife do most of the work. And I like to create 3 fairly deep slashes. All right, let me see a little bit of smoke. Ooh, and there it is again. Be very, very careful. Now, this seems a little haphazard, but we're gonna grab our parchment paper and we're gonna drop it into our Dutch oven. No fear, you got this. Put our oven mitts back on, put the lid on, and it's gonna go into the oven for 20 minutes with the lid on. It's been 20 minutes since it's been in the oven, so I'm gonna uncover it. And it has a very nice oven spring. It rose a lot, but as you can see, it's still pretty pale. So I'm gonna put it back in for 15 to 20 or until it's deeply brown and golden. So we'll see you then. So I just pulled this out of the oven. It's been 15 minutes since I uncovered it and it browned very nicely. So I'm gonna grab it by my parchment paper. Woo. I'm gonna put it on here. Look at that. If you kind of tap on it, you can hear how hard it is. So I know this is hard, but please be patient. Wait at least 1 hour, hour and a half until you can cut into it. Your patience, again, will be greatly rewarded. Thank you so much for joining us today in making this loaf of bread. I hope this inspires you to get busy in the kitchen.